Welcome to the deep dive. So, imagine, if you will, you're an underground squatter.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, you're living in this highly experimental, totally avant-garde 1970s Berlin art commune.
Right, which is just about as far from commercial music as you can possibly get.
Exactly, a place completely detached from commercial reality. But then, imagine that exact same person sitting down just a few years later and writing one of the most polished, commercially successful synth pop anthems in modern history.
It's an incredible pivot, truly.
It really is. So today we have this fascinating stack of biographical and discographical notes on Marion Gold.
The voice of Alphaville.
Yes, exactly. If you follow the genre at all, you already know him. He's this massive, multi-octave voice, the front man, and really the enduring force behind the band.
And we're really digging into the anatomy of artistic longevity today. Because, capturing the cultural zeitgeist for a few years in the 1980s, that's an incredible feat on its own.
Oh, totally.
But figuring out how to keep your creative engine running, how to actually survive the changing of the decades and carry that banner into a totally new century, that requires a completely different set of survival skills.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today isn't just to bask in the nostalgia of those, massive neon-drenched anthems.
So they are great anthems.
They are. They are. But we want to look at the machinery underneath all that. And to understand the really polished output of Marion Gold, we kind of have to start with his decidedly unpolished beginnings.
Right before the fame.
Yeah, so he was born Hartwig Schierbaum in 1954 in Herford, West Germany.
Which is not exactly the glitzy pop capital of the world.
No, not at all. But the really pivotal chapter here, according to our sources, happens well before the glossy music videos and the global tours. He was a core part of this West Berlin art collective known as the Nelson Community.
Which honestly is the skeleton key to his entire career.
Really, the commune is the key.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the late 1970s Berlin art scene, you're looking at an environment that was notoriously raw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's highly conceptual.
It's a totally different vibe.
Completely. The artists operating in these collectives, they were not structuring their days around commercial viability or, focus groups.
Right, they weren't trying to write a radio hit.
Exactly. They were pushing boundaries, just challenging the very definition of performance art. And it was within this specific kind of chaotic collective ecosystem that he formed a band called Chinchilla Green.
Right, Chinchilla Green, which matters because that's where he first collaborates with Bernhard Lloyd.
Yes, who eventually becomes a founding member of Alphaville with him.
Right. But I want to linger on this Nelson Community era for a second because I feel like it reframes everything.
How do you mean?
Well, it feels less like a traditional band setup, like where you practice in your parents' garage hoping some A&R guy signs you. It sounds much more like a modern-day tech startup incubator or like an open-source coding project.
An open-source coding project. I like that. Expand on that a bit.
Okay, so in an open-source community, you don't have a corporate mandate, right? You just have a bunch of highly creative, deeply idiosyncratic people contributing code.
Tearing it apart, rebuilding it.
Exactly. You are allowed to fail. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. You can adopt a dozen different creative identities before you find the one that actually works.
Right. It's an environment of pure, messy experimentation.
Yeah. And here's my question. I have to challenge the trajectory here.
Okay, go for it.
If your foundation is built in an underground, avant-garde, completely anti-commercial art commune,
It was.
how do you pivot from that into creating perfectly structured, massively commercial pop anthems? If you're listening to this and you work in any creative field, you know that transitioning from pure art to a commercial product usually means you have to compromise your vision.
The whole selling out concept.
Exactly. Didn't he have to fundamentally sell out or at least sand off all his rough edges to make it onto the radio?
It's so natural to assume that. But what's fascinating here is that if you look at the trajectory of artists who successfully make that leap, the avant-garde background doesn't contradict the pop success.
It doesn't.
No, it actually fuels it. When Marion Gold and his collaborators approached mainstream pop music, they weren't viewing it as a corporate mandate. They approached the concept of pop music itself as a giant, highly ambitious art project.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is a subtle but massive distinction.
Right. Pop is just the chosen medium for them.
It's not a set of handcuffs.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you learn in an experimental collective. You learn how to conceptualize a feeling from the ground up.
You learn the mechanics of emotion.
Exactly. So when they eventually transition into the pop arena, and start using the tools of the trade, the synthesizers, the soaring melodies, those rigid verse-chorus structures. They aren't just making disposable radio filler.
They're making art.
They are injecting underground conceptual sensibilities into a commercial framework. It operates almost like a Trojan horse.
I love that. A Trojan horse of feelings.
They use the pristine, polished sound of 80s synth pop to deliver these incredibly sweeping, existential ideas to millions of people.
And that delivery system officially launches in 1982. This is the moment Gold joins forces with Bernhard Lloyd and Frank Mertens.
The core trio.
Right. And initially, they call the band Forever Young.
Which is a great name.
We will definitely come back to that name. But they soon rename it to Alphaville. And the output from this collaboration is just staggering.
Oh, the hits just kept coming.
He provides the lead vocals for this string of massive, iconic hits. Big in Japan, Sounds Like a Melody, Dance With Me, Jerusalem, and of course the absolute titan of a track, Forever Young.
Anthems, all of them.
But reading through the discographical notes, the one technical detail that just repeatedly gets highlighted isn't the synths, it's Gold's voice itself.
Yes.
The guy possesses a multi-octave tenor vocal range.
A physiological fact that dictates the entire sonic architecture of the band, really.
It's the ultimate tool upgrade. Like, here's where it gets really interesting. If you are an artist listening to this, imagine you're a painter who has spent years working with, say, a standard 8-color palette.
Very basic primary colors.
Right. You can do great work, you can paint beautiful scenes, but suddenly someone drops a massive professional 100-color set on your desk.
With every conceivable gradient.
Every shade, metallic hues, everything. That is what a multi-octave tenor range provides. It vastly expands the emotional toolkit available to the artist.
You're not restricted anymore.
In a single chorus, he can go from this low, brooding, almost whispered delivery to a soaring, dramatic, theatrical high note.
And we have to consider the specific canvas he was painting on with that 100-color palette.
Which actually brings me to a question about the dynamic of the genre itself. Because we know Marian Gold's vocal range is a powerhouse.
Unquestionably.
But did his voice carry the band on its own? Or, and this is what I'm wondering, is there something inherent to the musical landscape of the 1980s that actually demanded that kind of voice?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Because if the instrumental tracks are built on these cold, synthesized electronic arrangements, did they require a highly dramatic human vocal just to make the music resonate with a listener? Like, wouldn't a massive theatrical voice over a computer beat run the risk of just sounding melodramatic?
You've hit on the central animating tension of the entire synth-pop movement right there.
Really? The tension between the machine and the voice?
Yes. To understand why it works, you have to look at the technology of the era. Early synthesizers and drum machines are fundamentally rigid. They are completely precise, and their output is quantized.
Wait, okay, for those of us who aren't audio engineers, what does quantized actually mean in this context? You're talking about locking the beat precisely to a digital grid, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you quantize a track, a computer forces every single note and every single drum hit to align perfectly with the mathematical grid of the tempo.
So no mistakes.
Right. It removes the micro-fluctuations. You lose the tiny imperfections of, say, a human drummer slightly rushing a fill or a bassist dragging slightly behind the beat.
Which gives music its groove, usually.
Exactly. So quantization creates a rhythm that is mathematically flawless. But as a result, it can feel completely detached. It can sound incredibly sterile.
Because it's a literal machine. It has no capacity for human error, which means it has no capacity for human vulnerability.
That is spot on. So if you take a track that is mathematically locked to a grid and you pair it with a flat, detached, monotone vocal performance,
The whole song just falls flat.
the entire song risks alienating the listener.
Yeah.
It becomes a mood piece, perhaps, but it's not an anthem.
Right. Nobody is crying in the club to a math equation.
Exactly. What Marian Gold did was step up to these unyielding, precise synthetic beats and unleash this dramatic, deeply vulnerable, multi-octave human instrument.
He brought the blood to the machine.
He injected a profound sense of human longing and theatricality right into the circuitry.
It's the friction. It's the warmth and imperfection of the human voice physically pushing back against the cold perfection of the machines.
That friction is the secret ingredient. It is exactly why a song like Forever Young or Big in Japan still evokes such a visceral emotional response today.
You feel it in your chest.
Because you aren't just listening to a catchy, quantized beat. You are listening to a very human voice that is pleading, celebrating, searching, and it's set against a backdrop that simply cannot be reasoned with.
The voice had to be the anchor.
Without that multi-octave capability, without that sweeping emotional range, the humanity of the song might not have pierced through those dense layers of synthesizers.
It's like the voice is the bridge between the listener and the machine.
That's a great way to put it.
But, you can't maintain that level of vocal and creative theatricality forever without the landscape shifting. The 80s eventually end.
They do. The machines change.
The cultural appetite pivots wildly in the early 1990s. We get grunge, we get alt-rock, and this brings us to the phase of the sources that I actually find the most revealing.
The marathon.
The marathon of creativity. Because Marian Gold doesn't just pack up his synthesizers when the defining decade of his genre closes.
Surviving the aftermath of your own peak is the true test of an artist. It's where most of them falter.
So let's look at the timeline. In 1992, Gold releases his first solo album titled So Long Celeste.
A very interesting record.
Yeah, and what really caught my eye isn't just that he went solo, but the specific material he included. Alongside his original work, he features these really fascinating cover versions.
Which is unexpected for someone known as a primary songwriter.
Right. He covers a song called The Shape of Things to Come, originally by a group called the Head Boys, and another track, One Step Behind You, by a band called Furniture. And then he follows that up with a second solo album, United, in 1996.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the decision to record covers at that specific juncture, we're talking 1992, right as the entire global music industry is undergoing a massive shift away from synthpop.
Toward plaid shirts and grunge.
Exactly. Making covers then is an incredibly revealing psychological choice.
It feels like an evolutionary tactic to me. It kind of reminds me of an actor who has spent 10 years starring in a massive, globally recognized blockbuster movie franchise.
The superhero trap.
Yeah, they've played the same superhero so many times they can literally do it in their sleep. Eventually, just to avoid losing their mind and their passion for the craft, they go do some weird experimental indie play in a basement theater somewhere.
Right, back to basics.
They take on someone else's script just to remember why they love acting in the first place, completely stripped of their own massive legacy. Or like a master chef deciding to cook another chef's signature dish just to discover new flavors.
It's a palate cleanser, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's also a fundamental recalibration.
How so?
Well, when you are the voice of a generation-defining sound, the pressure to become a heritage act is immense.
Oh, sure.
The industry and the fans, they often just want you to play the old hits exactly as they remember them and cash the checks. And, there's no shame in that route.
Right. For many, that is the dream retirement plan. Play the hits, make the money.
But if you are fundamentally driven by the act of creation, as Gold clearly is, standing still is a kind of artistic death. Disassembling someone else's song, like a track by Furniture or the Head Boys, it forces you to engage with music from an entirely different angle.
You have to step outside your own habits.
Exactly. You have to figure out how their chords work, how their melodies resolve. It's a vital way to reset your creative engine when the initial overwhelming wave of Alphaville's 1980s fame was receding.
It's like you're checking under the hood of someone else's car to see how they built their engine, which helps you figure out how to rebuild yours.
Perfectly said.
And clearly, the rebuild was successful. Because our sources point out that if we fast forward all the way to the present day, specifically noted in the text as 2022, Gold is the sole remaining original member of Alphaville.
The last man standing.
Yeah, and that same year, he released the band's latest album, Eternally Yours. So I have to ask, what does it take, psychologically, to be the last man standing 4 decades later? Is it just sheer stubbornness?
Stubbornness might get you through a difficult tour, sure. But it doesn't result in a new studio album 40 years into your career.
That takes something else.
It requires an incredible amount of psychological resilience and a truly lifelong dedication to the craft itself. He is still carrying the Alphaville banner because he is deeply committed to the act of performance and songwriting.
He loves the work.
He wasn't just riding a cultural wave in the 80s. He was building a ship that could sail on its own long after the storm passed.
Well, you can't maintain that kind of marathon, releasing music and touring for 40 years without some kind of complex infrastructure behind you.
No, you cannot.
Which leads us to look at the personal reality running parallel to this very public artistic journey. And the sources show that his private life is not exactly a simple, quiet retreat.
The parallel lives of globally recognized artists rarely are simple.
Yeah, that's fair. Looking at the biographical notes in the late 1980s, which, let's remember, would be the absolute dizzying height of his global fame,
When they were massive.
Gold was living in Münster, West Germany, with his then-wife, Manuela. Furthermore, over the course of his life, he has fathered 7 children with 4 different women.
That is a remarkably expansive, complex personal life, particularly when you consider it is happening in the background of a notoriously grueling industry.
So what does this all mean? The cognitive dissonance is what gets me.
The contrast.
Yeah, you have this jet-setting, glamorous, almost untouchable pop star life, literally implied by a song titled Big in Japan. You're
Wow.
playing to massive crowds, traveling the world, and then you have the deeply grounded domestic reality of buying groceries and living a daily life in a city like Münster in the late 80s.
Two different worlds.
When you look at an intensely complex, sprawling personal life, like that 7 children, 4 partners, how do you reconcile that with the art? Does that sprawling life mirror the dramatic, multi-octave nature of his music, or is it entirely separate?
We constantly seek out patterns like that, don't we?
We want it to make sense.
Right. We want the artist's private life to neatly match the emotional contours of their public art. We consume an artist's output as these neatly packaged 3-minute anthems. They are perfectly contained, they are polished, and they have a clear beginning, middle, and end.
They're a product.
But the lived experience of the human being actually making those anthems is entirely different. It is messy, it is sprawling, and it is deeply, sometimes overwhelmingly human.
It's like the 100-color palette isn't just reserved for his vocal range.
No, it applies to his daily life, too.
Exactly.
Maintaining a sprawling family structure with multiple partners and many children requires an immense amount of emotional and logistical energy, much like maintaining a multi-decade music career.
It's a lot to manage.
It points to a life lived loudly and fully. It encompasses all the complexities, the joys, and the fractures that inevitably come with that. It reminds the listener that the soaring theatrical voice on those synth-pop tracks belongs to a real person navigating a very complicated reality, dealing with the same messy realities as anyone else.
It strips away all that neon-drenched mythology, doesn't it?
It grounds those glittering synthesizers in actual flesh and blood.
I love that. Knowing the complex life happening underneath the tracks just makes the music feel heavier, more resonant.
It proves that the art wasn't created in a vacuum. It was forged right in the middle of a very crowded, very real life.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the archives of Marian Gold and Alphaville, I think the real actionable takeaway for you listening right now,
The lesson here.
yeah, whether you are an artist yourself, a professional navigating some massive shift in your industry, or just someone dealing with the inevitable changes of everyday life, the takeaway is this powerful concept of reinvention and endurance. Survival isn't about standing still and protecting your legacy.
Survival requires movement.
Look at the sheer scope of the journey we just talked about. Going from Hartwig, the rebellious experimenter in a 1970s Berlin art commune, to the multi-octave frontman of a massive synth-pop explosion.
And then stepping away.
Right, stepping away to do indie covers in the 90s just to reset his creative compass. All the way to being the enduring soul original voice of Alphaville today in 2022 and beyond. It proves that lasting success is about constantly evolving.
You have to adapt.
You adapt to the changing grids and shifting cultures, but you do it while fiercely honoring your core talents, which in his case was that undeniable soaring voice.
And if I could leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over, it requires looking all the way back to the very beginning of this timeline.
Okay, take us back.
Before they ever released a record, before the world knew them as Alphaville, the band's original chosen name was Forever Young.
Oh, wow, I totally forgot about that. They had the name before they even had the hit.
They did. They changed the band name, obviously, but they kept the title for the song. But consider the psychological weight of that initial choice.
Setting an intention.
Marian Gold is now the sole remaining original member of that trio. He is still out there, releasing new music like Eternally Yours, performing those sweeping vocals into his late 60s and early 70s.
He's still doing it.
It begs the question, did that original band name, Forever Young, serve as a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy?
A mission statement disguised as a band name.
Exactly. It invites you to deeply consider the incredible psychological power of the names and the intentions we set for our own projects at the very beginning of our journeys.
That is so true.
Sometimes the wild, ambitious declaration we make when we are just starting out, when we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall in our own metaphorical art communes, is the exact thing that sustains us decades down the line.
The intention completely outlives the era. I absolutely love that. So the next time you hear those precise, quantized 80s synths kick in, don't just think of the nostalgia. Think of the 40-year human marathon it took to keep that music alive. Keep evolving, keep experimenting, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.